All right. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to the Provider AWS meeting. Remember to follow the CNCF community guidelines and to everybody. Looks like we have a couple things on the agenda right now. So I'll go ahead and hand it off to Peter to talk about Cubelet server certificate approvals.
Yeah, hi. So I'm working on adding support for BottleRocket to KOps. BottleRocket requires the rotate kubelet server certificate feature gate, which creates a CSR for the kubelet server certificate. The Kubernetes documentation mentions that these CSRs are explicitly not auto-approved by any built-in controller for security reasons. So I'm wondering the best way to approve these. Just from searching GitHub, I found the GCP cloud provider has a built-in controller that will approve them based on the node name and IP. And I'm wondering if it makes sense for the AWS Cloud Controller Manager to include a controller for this, or if there's another way that I should be doing that, and if we should make a generic solution for that or not. So.
Yeah, I'll just throw in the perspective from EKS. So we do auto approve node server certificates, and what we do is we just kind of check to make sure that everything looks like it should by querying the EC2 API and just double checking that the SANs, the subject alternative names are, if we get a node ID from a specific node, then we want to know that the SAN IP addresses match up with what we see in EC2. So, we don't want some cert coming along with like, an IP from every node in their account or something like that. But other than that, we don't do anything else. I think one thing that from our side we should think about is open sourcing the certificate controller and just like adding it to the cloud provider. So I can talk to my team about that and see what people think.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. And just from the KOps perspective, it'd be nice to make that optional to like conditionally enable that controller in the Cloud Controller Manager. And then I guess this might be a stretch goal, but be more restrictive about approvals, more than just, is it an instance in the account that has the right node name and IP, but also, additional conditions like, is this, you could, I don't know, there's a variety of other conditions you could make it more restrictive for. So if we could make that configurable somehow, that would be great.
Yeah, and I'm curious, did you have any conditions, specific conditions in mind that you were looking for?
Well, I'm thinking about, so KOps uses its own out-of-band process for Cubelet authentication. And so the only nodes that would be creating CSRs for this would be BottleRocket nodes. And so if a cert were to come in from a node that's not BottleRocket, then we know that that's not valid. There's probably security, ways you could get around that or something like that, but maybe something to consider.
So like maybe a way to add just more things to check for that are not from the EC2 API, but come from the CSR, just metadata in the CSR or something.
Yeah, I don't know I don't think there's a lot of information in the CSR that we can read from and that we can trust, but maybe there's things beyond the node name and IP address that we could be looking for. Yeah.
I think in the GCP, they're also they add like an additional block, PEM block, which includes TPM identity. So which we could do something similar around instance identity as well. Some stronger guarantee of node identity than just an IP address, which, like you say, you're already doing that in COPS for the client authentication. The EKS is already doing it through the AWS IAM authenticator. So it would be interesting to do that at the cloud provider level rather than each COPS, Cluster API, EKS doing their own thing. It'd be nice to have a common mechanism, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, TPM is interesting. I don't know anything about AWS support for TPMs. I don't know if we have it at all.
No, you wouldn't. So you'd use the instance identity document or like STS get caller identity as an alternative.
Right, which is what
you want
we
to
do.
see something like that. Spiffy is doing that. Right. So Spiffy is a project to provide workload identity, and there's node agents, and then for each cloud there's a specific node attestation mechanism. So for AWS it is using instance identity, and for other systems it's TPM. So it's up to each cloud to provide their own attestation mechanism, as long as they have one. And yeah, just Google happens to use TPM, and vSphere happens to use TPM, and it's fine to use. I think the instance identity is sufficient, and that's what COPS is using. Is using the STS get caller identity at the moment, isn't it? So we could create a challenge mechanism like that.
Yeah, something that could restrict like only these instance identities are allowed to be approved for a CSR. That would be sufficient in my mind.
Got it. Okay, well, yeah, I'll bring that back to the team and see if they want to open source the controller. We can go from there. Cool. Anything else on that one? All right, Kishore, legacy cloud provider fix.
So I have a fix for the legacy cloud provider. So what we changed was making the cluster tag optional on the subnets. So when we auto discover, we also consider subnets that do not have any of the cluster tags. And we raised a PR against the master branch, and we cherry picked to EKS 119. So we intend to like support it starting from EKS 119 onwards. EKS is a little behind the master, the Kubernetes release. So we lag a little bit behind, and we intend to support this moving forward 119. And there are a couple use cases like customers don't want to share the subnet across load balancers for security reasons. So that's the reason we are providing this feature. And we want this to be merged to the master. It simplifies management, patch management for us. And of course, it's going to make sure that KOps user also get the same experience as the EKS. So that is the reason why I want to ask for an exception for this feature. And we'll definitely merge to V2, and V2 and the load balancer controller is where majority of our feature is going to go moving forward. But during the time when those components are not available, we want to give a priority to this fix.
Cool. I'll say that I think I have that PR open to basically copy legacy into external, so that we'll have a working version of the legacy provider in external. So I think we need to prioritize getting that ported over so we can move closer to deprecating entry, but I'll let Andrew speak to whether or not we want to have an exception for this.
Yeah, like I'm still gathering context. I'll admit that I don't fully understand the PR yet, but it sounds like there's kind of a possible like security implication angle to it. Like it's not just a nice to have feature. Like not having the feature, has like a negative security implication. So I think if we can kind of maybe update the description and maybe have a comment in the thread there, kind of explaining how like it's not just like a feature, it's potentially a bug and there are some security implications to it. I think that would help move the PR along. Just because like broadly speaking, we're saying that like there's no more features allowed because we want to shift focus, right? But we're allowing bugs and obviously we allow security fixes. So I feel like if we can just reframe this as a bug or a security bug, I think I'd be fine with that. Like if it's clear that this is just a feature, then yeah, like that, I don't know. I feel like we'd have to discuss it a little bit further, maybe bring in Walter as well.
It's not like a nice to have feature, definitely like because of the security implications that we are prioritizing it. Otherwise, we have no reason to invest in the legacy cloud provider. I'll definitely do that in the PR. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds good. I will also make sure to review that. Just yeah, so that we can also unblock Nick's PR to port things over. Yeah, I would start with changing the kind to kind bug, and then explaining why it's a bug, not a feature. And I think once we do that, like I'm happy to approve it and make an exception.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Great. Sounds good. All right, I think we're at the end of our agenda. Does anybody have anything else that they wanted to bring up today? Still reeling from the new year. All right, cool. I think everybody can have some time back. Thanks for coming, guys, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.